Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're a fan of the UFC. And from the title of this video, you know we're going to be breaking down Sean O'Malley versus Chico Vera 2, which will be the main event for UFC 299. Now this fight has been on the horizon for quite some time now. After their first fight, it was pretty clear that we'd probably be seeing a rematch with them sometime in the near future. They were both top contenders at that point. And with such like an unclear ending, with O'Malley breaking his foot and not being able to continue, I think we were all left wanting more. Since then, they have both racked up several wins. O'Malley hasn't lost a fight since he picked up the championship belt in his last fight, where he knocked out Aljamain Sterling. We will touch on that in a minute. And Chico Vera has added an impressive 5 wins to his resume since that fight. So this bout has been a long time in the making. I think as fans, we're really lucky to have this as a main event because whether you like or dislike either fighter, they've never really had a boring fight. You know, between the two of them, they probably have dozens of finishes, and even their fights that go the distance, I just feel like they've never been boring. So I think we'll have a really exciting fight regardless of who you're rooting for. Now, real quick, before we get into the actual matchup and everything, I do want to address some of the hype and hate I feel like O'Malley has gotten over the years. Yes, while I may not necessarily consider myself a true O'Malley fan, I do think he's done enough to earn the respect from all of us. For a long time, I think a lot of fans wanted to discredit O'Malley and the wins he had. You know, he wasn't really facing the top level talent like we felt like he should have been facing. But in the last 2 fights he's had, you know, winning a close decision against Peter Yan and knocking out Aljamain Sterling, he's more than proved that he deserves the respect of the organization and fans alike. So Aljo also had a pretty successful reign as the 135 champ. He beat Peter Yan, TJ Dillashaw, and Henry Cejudo, 3 really tough former champions. And that kind of resume is tough to bet against. So that's why initially I went with Aljo. The whole lead up to that fight, I was confident in my choice. I thought he had no takedown defense. So for him to go out there and knock out such a dominant champion, I was very impressed. So looking at these two fighters, I obviously give Sean O'Malley the edge in the striking department, but that's a given. I think Chito is a very good striker in his own right, though, and we can't dismiss all the finishes he's gotten over the years. So with the striking, we're gonna, be looking at Sean maybe getting an A on his report card, and Chito's maybe like at an A-. So I think the way their striking is gonna help determine the winner is in the method behind the striking, though. We have 2 distinct body types, 2 distinct personalities, and with that, 2 distinct fighting styles. On one hand, we have Sean O'Malley. He's such a tall, lanky fighter. He does a really good job of managing the distance. He never really overexerts himself looking for a finish, and he's one of the most precise strikers in the organization. I'm not saying one style is better than the other, though, but a lot of other knockout artists that we see really throw like everything they got and they try to put the pressure on early. Like I said, though, I don't think one's better than the other, but they both have their pros and cons. But a style like Chito's is very effective also, and it makes for a very entertaining matchup. In my opinion, Chito may not have that one punch knockout power, but he does have the ability to absolutely batter his opponents with strikes. He has punches, kicks, knees, and elbows, especially on the ground. I don't think he's had an opponent that has walked away clean. There's always bruises, bloodies, and even if they won. So I think Chito brings a different sense of violence into the octagon when he fights, and I'm interested to see if that's something that O'Malley can contend with. The sport has athletes and the sport has fighters, and Chico Vera is definitely a fighter. He's a dog. He doesn't back down from a firefight. He doesn't care if he gets hit. He just wants to hurt the person on the other side of the cage. Is that a good thing? Definitely. Is that a bad thing? Yes. Let me explain why. I think that mentality and fight style could be a really big factor in deciding who wins this fight. I think we have to look at O'Malley's fight against Peter Yan to really understand why. In that fight, we were able to see someone finally threaten Sean. It was the first time we saw someone put him on the back foot, and it was the first time that we had to see how he recovered. That fight was a big step up in competition for Sean. And he didn't necessarily pass with flying colors, but he did take home a win and a lot of valuable experience, in my opinion. And a quick recap, the fight as a whole had Yan landing more numbers and a couple takedowns, but O'Malley was definitely landing the bigger and harder shots, except for in the middle of the night where Yan had dropped O'Malley. That was like the first time we had seen Sean in any type of danger. And to be honest, for a short amount of time, it seemed like O'Malley's confidence was broken and he might give up. Now that round ended and he was able to recover and eventually close it out with a split decision win. But I think that brief moment is important for Chito because if he can apply that same pressure Yan did, maybe we'll see Sean's spirits start to break a little bit, or at least he could, take some of the wind out of O'Malley's sails. That's a big maybe though. And We are just kind of speculating, but I think O'Malley might have some more resilience than we haven't might quite seen yet. He has the composure of a champion, so it's not too far-fetched to assume that he can tough it out if need be. Chito, like we said earlier, is a dog. I don't see him quitting even if he's hurt. He's shown his toughness time and time again, and I would expect nothing less but the same here. One thing we might see different from Chito is his effort to get started in the early rounds. I think Chito is obviously experienced enough to know what he needs to change up for this fight, but it could also be wishful thinking on my end. Personally, I would like to see him try to get started a little earlier. It seems like he has a tendency, or I mean, maybe it's a choice, but either way, he seems to kind of take the first round or two and kind of find his footing before he really turns it up. It's really tough to say what the correct approach for this fight is, though. So let's just see what Chito's weaknesses are, and maybe that path to victory will become just a little more clear. I am going to count this first one as half strength, half weakness, because I do think it's going to be somewhat necessary, even if it puts him at risk, and that's brawling. We've seen many times that Chito has no problem throwing himself into a brawl. It actually seems like he prefers it, and to his credit, he does it very well. I think pulling O'Malley into a brawl is going to vastly increase Chito's chance of winning, because I don't see anyone out-techniquing O'Malley. His reads and eyes for openings is just a step ahead of the rest of the division for the most part. Pulling O'Malley into that brawl, though, is going to be no easy task. I just don't see why O'Malley would be willing to take that risk unless it was absolutely necessary. I might even go out on a limb, and this is just from the outside looking in. I might make a small prediction here, but I think throughout the fight, we might see a few moments where O'Malley tags up Chito, but then lets up on the pressure, hoping to bait Chito. O'Malley can then capitalize on Chito's over-aggressiveness. I personally think that would be a smart move by O'Malley, and it's very plausible based on both of their personalities. I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but to wrap it up, Chito's brawling nature is good and bad, so it'll be a good opportunity for him to try and break Sean, but trading with the best striker in his weight class is a dangerous game. Number 2, weakness, but also strength for Chito. It's funny because I feel like both of his strengths are also his weaknesses, but hear me out. It's his grappling. Chito is such a good grappler, especially when it comes to MMA, where he can land a lot of damaging strikes from the top position. The weakness I see actually has nothing to do with his technique or his actual grappling, but more so his carelessness about when to use it. His grappling and control is so underutilized. I know he does use it in some fights, but there's been several matchups where he hasn't, and he's almost neglected it completely. I will give Chito his pros, though, and say he is well-rounded enough to not need to grapple all the time. He can and has beaten top competition without it, but I can't help but think we'd have more wins and easier wins if he were just willing to use his jiu-jitsu rather than standing and trading. MMA is a game of inches, though, and sometimes just having more tools in the toolbox is enough to inch you closer to victory. In a lot of aspects, I give Chito some big advantages. He has high enough level striking. His jiu-jitsu is far better. His wrestling is better, and he's shown to have a solid chin. But there's also one big one here. He has shown that he can go a whole 5 rounds at a high pace. We have never actually seen O'Malley go past 3 rounds, and even in those 3 rounds, we've never really seen him push into pace and really redline himself. Chito is going to be a tough fight for him. I know Sean already has the belt, but I think this is actually going to be his toughest challenge thus far. I can easily see Chito gaining momentum and adding up strikes, especially if we go into rounds 3, 4, and 5, where Sean hasn't really shown his resilience yet. I think there's a chance we'll see the battering of Chito strikes start to break Sean, and I think there's a chance that we start to see some exhaustion set in on Sean, and we might even see him fade in that way as well. Even if you're finding success with your own striking and takedown defense, trying to create distance and reset and defend strikes and takedown attempts, it's exhausting. I don't think Chito really gets tired, or at least I can't remember too many examples off the top of my head. And even if he did get tired, I don't think he's the type to stop trying. I think Chito has a different type of fighting spirit than a lot of the division, and he's not the type to just let up on aggression just because he's tired. I'll give him that. Now, I know we've talked a lot about Chito, and the reason being, I feel like we have been able to see such a diverse skill set against an array of extremely high-level fighters. Like I said before, Sean has definitely proved himself in his last couple fights, but we have yet to see most of his skill set shine against the highest level fighters. I think Sean has showcased his high-level, movements and traps and setups and obvious power, but I can't wait to see that consistently against more high-level opponents. I think he'll definitely deliver, this time around as well, but I get to hear all night and talk about his abilities in the striking department, but at this point, I think we've all seen them on display. We've seen the high-level movement, we've seen the high-level setups, and obviously the one-punch knockout power, but every fight he has delivered with the striking, so I expect nothing less this time around. We've been throwing around a lot of maybes and possibilities for a while now, so let's try to wrap this up. Ultimately, I think this is going to end up being a striking heavy bout. I see Sean throwing the more precise strikes and having a lot of good counters. I see Chito throwing a lot of numbers, and he might get tagged, but I think he's going to, tag Sean quite a bit too. I think Chito's shown on several occasions that he's willing to throw the safer grappling route aside and engage in these striking exchanges. And with such a striking heavy bout on our hands, I think some of the very small details are going to make a big difference. One of the biggest determining factors I could see is the way they engage in these striking exchanges. Chito is a bit of a stalker. He comes right at you and he's very direct with his approach. Sean on the opposite end, he has great movement. He does a great job of creating angles and setting traps. A lot of the time he's doing that with feints and fakes. I think that's going to be what shifts the likeliness of victory into his favor. I think so long as Chito doesn't chop out that front leg of Sean, Sean will be able to use his movement and create those angles and dictate the engagement of the exchanges on his terms more often. So for those reasons, I'm going to go with O'Malley on this one. Now, I threw a lot at you there, but there's a lot that goes into this prediction. And that's why sometimes I just sit back and enjoy these fights as a fan. Just to wrap it up, once again, I am taking Sean O'Malley on this one. Like I said, I think this is going to be a very striking heavy bout. And Sean just has the upper hand in the striking IQ and his ability to create angles and set traps. One thing before you go, as of today, I saw that Merab is stepping in as a backup for this fight. I could do a whole nother breakdown on that fight. I think him and O'Malley would make for an awesome main event for this card. I'm not saying that I hope it happens, but I wouldn't mind if it did. That fight's been a while in the making as well. And with Sean beating Merab's teammate and Aljamain Sterling and Merab wearing O'Malley's jacket and all that drama, if it so happens that Merab will be stepping in, I'll try and get another video of how I think that fight will go, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We still have a really great main event in our hands with O'Malley and Chico Vera. Regardless of who you're rooting for, I think this will be a very entertaining fight. I'm definitely not going to miss it. Maybe we'll see some opponent changes at the last minute, but if you throw any of these three fighters in there, whether it's O'Malley and Chito or Chito and Merab, Merab and O'Malley, I think you've got a great fight in your hands. So there you have it. Thanks again for supporting the channel. We've been doing our best to keep these videos rolling out, and the channel seems to be growing slowly but steadily. You, the viewers, have been such a big help in that. I'll go ahead and I'll link some of the other social media accounts in the description in case you haven't seen them yet. But thanks again. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.